Good evening and welcome to the Common Council meeting for April 4th, 2012. Clerk will call the roll, please.
Lottie.
Here.
Sedlacek.
Present.
Jarvis. Here. Hanson.
Present.
Anderson.
Present.
Fowler.
Here.
Riley.
Present.
Let the record show we have a quorum for a Common Council meeting. Next item is Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to those in the audience and those at home this evening. The next item on the agenda is the acceptance of the minutes of the regular meeting held March 13th, 2012. I would ask Clerk Huberty to make one correction for us, and then we'll entertain a motion.
In item number 11, it talks about the park board has approved the moving of Bade Memorial across the street to the utility park. It should be corrected to say, and considering renaming the park to Bade Utility Park. That was not changed, it was just talked about for consideration.
So it's still on their agenda.
Yeah.
Thank you. With that, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as changed, as indicated.
So moved, Alder Anderson.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item is the audience portion where you get to talk and we get to listen. Has anybody signed up this evening? I don't think anybody has. Double check just to make sure. We certainly encourage citizens in the community to come and address the council. It is where you have your chance to talk to us and we get to listen, as I indicated. And the only person that signed, no wonder you went to go get the list.
Get it for you. I knew I signed up.
You wanted to talk.
I do.
Bill Emig, please.
Thank you, Mayor Pullman. There's a couple of things I want to just let the council and the outside people know about. Is first, we'd like to thank the Boy Scouts Troop 851 for doing such a good job of cleaning up City Park. They ran around and picked up all the sticks and everything. And it'll be all ready for the Easter egg hunt, which is this Saturday. I'm guessing it starts at 10 o'clock. I'm not positive. You contact the Eagles Club. They're doing it. Or if you call City Hall tomorrow, we'll try to find out for you what time it begins. Does anyone know? Okay. There's a sign down by the mill pond, by the Veterans
Sounds
Park.
good.
So if you look there. And the other thing I would like people to be aware of is that the drop-off site at the city garage opens up April 14th, not this Saturday, but the following Saturday. And people can bring down their branches, yard waste, metal items, and waste oil. We do not want anything with Freon. We do not want electronics. And that is open from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. every Saturday, beginning on the 14th. And to let people know that they can also bring their yard waste down any day, Monday through Friday, from about 7 o'clock until about 3:15. The gates open then. So, thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Next item on the agenda is item 5, ordinances. An ordinance amending portions of Title 8, Chapter 4 of the Municipal Code regarding city cemeteries. Ordinance number 7. This is the first presentation. And I would ask either Bill or Director Jurgis to just give us a brief summary on that, and then answer the question, do we need to waive the second reading, or is it okay just to wait till the next meeting? So, Director?
I can start. In your packet, you received the ordinance. You also should have received in front of your seat second ordinance, there's one change or addition to the draft ordinance, and I will go over that with you. As you know, previously, at previous meetings, we talked about the elimination of the perpetual care fund and transferring the perpetual care funds to the committed other accounts for purposes of the for specific purposes of future improvements to the cemetery. And we also talked about the council authorizing funds from that to go to the purchase of the 4.5 acres. The ordinance in front of you, the strike-through is things that are being deleted from the ordinance. The bold sections are things that are being added to the ordinance. I would start with section 842. I just want to highlight C and D, since we are amending the ordinance. It makes sense at this time to look at adjusting the fee schedule. From time to time, the council approves changes to the fee schedule, which we actually have incorporated in the ordinance, and we haven't done that for 5 or 6 years. Under C and D, it increases, for C, for residents, it increases the cost by $50, and D, it would be $100 for non-residents. Although section E and F have been added related to cremation plot areas, which would be half of a lot. So it would be an additional option for people that are looking at cremations, where it would be $150 for half a lot, and then it would be double the cost for non-residents. That language has been added in there. If you go to page 2, under 846, I just wanted to highlight that each grave site in the designated cremation plot area is allowed one headstone installed flush to the ground and shall be flat or horizontal to the ground. Such flat headstone shall be approved by the superintendent of cemeteries. In the other one also that was included before you, there was section 845, which talks about urn boxes and flower beds not being allowed in the cremation designated lots. Just clarification for that. And then the rest of the ordinance pretty much is deleting the reference to the cemetery perpetual care fund and the funds being held in trust.
Thank you, Director. Any additions right offhand, Bill?
You know, my thoughts on this cremation gravesite area, because we don't really have one yet, but when you come into the cemetery, if any of you've ever been out there, you know, you drive in and there's a road going, there's an intersection, you can go right, left, and go back. And there are lots from that road that goes east and west out towards Highway C. And so I would think in the front would be the cremation area, because we're not allowing any headstones to stick up. We're not allowing any plantings or urns. It'll be just basically a flat. It'll look pretty much like it does now, except it'll have headstones flush to the ground. And then but the other issue we have, and we'll have to talk about that more at another time, but there's a pretty good sized swale or hole in there that really should be filled up before we start going towards the east. So there is some area we could get started on. There needs to be some work on this other area, and by doing this, and we kind of talked a little bit about it, is, you know, how long will the land last that we have now? And by doing this, it'll make it last that much longer, because a lot of people do buy a full grave site and just put 2 cremations on it, and this way we can stretch the land that much longer. So just wanted to give you a little heads up on that. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Director Yurgis. And any comment about urgency on it? Can we wait for a second presentation? Does it make any difference?
We haven't done I mean, there's nothing in our ordinance that requires a first and second
No.
reading, and we haven't done that probably in months, so I mean,
Okay,
it's up to the
fine.
council how they want to treat that.
The chair will entertain a motion at this time. Alderman Alati.
I would move to defer the second reading on it and pass ordinance.
So, seconded by Alder Anderson.
We have a first and a second to waive the second presentation and enact the ordinance as indicated with the changes and additions. Alderman Hanson.
If this is enacted, then the prices don't take effect until probably Tuesday when it's published, is that correct?
Correct, the day after publication.
I just want to let the public be aware of that, that's, a rush,
Discounted rate.
dying to get in.
Maybe you want to hold
It's a-
it off
it's a-
another week.
it's a dying
you know,
business,
You
but-
might get a good, you might
I don't
want to
know
hold
if it's that
off.
rushing. Any other comments? Clerk will call the roll, please.
Riley.
Yes.
Fowler.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Jarvis. Sedlacek.
Yes.
Lottie.
Yes.
Motion carried, thank you. Item 6, resolutions. 6A, 2011 Budget Adjustment Resolution, Resolution number 12. I would ask Director Yurgis and Clerk Huberty to summarize this. We're doing a little housekeeping here. This is a annual adjustment that comes from our auditor, Paul. And Clerk Huberty, why don't you run through the highlights for us?
Director Yurgis.
Okay,
Yeah.
Director.
This is the annual budget adjustment resolution, which we approve every year, right about this time. This takes into account all of the adjustments throughout the year that we have worked on with our auditors. What it also does is with the labor pool budget, on an annual basis, we have a public works labor pool. And then throughout the year, based on the time cards, different amounts get billed to different accounts. And so at the end of the year, we always do an adjustment and actually allocate the dollar amounts to the exact accounts based on what they've worked, in what areas they've worked on in throughout the year. At the beginning, just want to highlight the bond proceeds. That's really related to our state trust fund loan that we refunded related to the pension. And then also wanted to highlight on the second page, where it talks about committed funds, it totals up to $62,000. Those are all things that flowed through our committed funds that are mostly related to capital projects, and were approved to be set aside for specific purposes in the committed fund, but then we didn't approve it through the budget process, but then at a later date, council approved those things, and this formally puts it into the meeting minutes in one resolution format. And then it also talks about the different revenues, Lone Oak Park that we received, $51,000, the county grant, MEG reimbursements in the police department, and the non-motorized transportation grant revenue that we also received. And then the last page again is the detailed labor pool budget for the Department of Public Works.
Thank you, Director.
Any questions from the council?
Chair will entertain a motion to approve the 2011 Budget Adjustment Resolution number 12.
So moved, Alderman.
Riley.
Second, Alderman Sriracha.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Lottie.
Yes.
Sedlacek.
Yes.
Jarvis. Hanson.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Fowler.
Yes.
Riley.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you. 6B, a resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of $3,815,000 general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2012A, Resolution number 13. Tonight, we have our bonding authority here, Phil Clausen from Ehlers, and good evening and welcome, Phil. And what kind of numbers do you have for us tonight?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Prior to tonight's meeting, I handed out the sale results packet. I'll spend a little bit of time going through that. And then also the final resolution, and I think, Patty, you said that they have the draft of this resolution in their packet. So not much different. I'll tell you what's different between the draft in your packet and what I just handed out. Prior to the sale, a couple of things occurred. One, I was here about a month ago, and you authorized us to proceed with this refinancing and partial restructuring of the debt, to the debt issues. And then, since that time, we prepared this official statement. You should all have received this official statement at home. That document is what we use then to solicit bids today at 10 o'clock. Also, between when you authorize the sale and the sale, we had a rating call with Moody's Investor Service. So if you go into the sale packet, and I think it's the last 6 pages of the sale packet is the rating. Starting on page 14 is the rating. I'll start with that. I guess I'll start with just saying not a lot of surprises. It's very similar to what you've seen the last couple of years when we went to Moody's. You are a AA3 rated community. They affirm that AA3 rating. And a lot of what they've identified for the strengths and challenges remain the same. We went through this not too long ago, so not a lot has changed. Under strengths, again, moderately size and growing tax base, characterized by residential valuations that are holding steady, probably more steady than a lot of places in the state. Another is unemployment rate for Sheboygan County is lower than the state and national rates. That's positives. In addition to that, we spent a significant amount of time, and Brian did, talking a great deal about a lot of the development that's occurred over the last couple of years, and I think that spoke highly of the a lot of the what you've seen as far as stabilizing of valuations and overall sectors, residential, commercial, and industrial. And then under challenges, this one still puzzles me to this day. Composition of largest taxpayers reflect concentration in cheese and food production industries. Well, in your case, that's been a real strength because they've all done very well and expanded. So they view it as a challenge because you have a high concentration in that area. And then a multi-year trend of narrowing on reserves, undesignated reserve fund balances. So those are some of the things. They're very similar to what you've heard before, not a lot of change. I could tell you that we've done a lot of ratings because we've done a lot of bond deals the last couple of months because of where rates are. And the challenge right now, and what I hear from a lot of my clients, is how do we move up to that next notch? How do we get to that AA3 to AA2? And really, in your case, it's I think the main thing is still growth in tax base. When you look at how you compare to that next notch up with AA2, and again, you're AA3, the communities are just that much bigger, population and valuation. And that's going to be one of the challenges. And then the other is going to be continuing to try to grow your fund balance. Those two items really kind of drive ratings a great deal. So that's what it's going to take, continued growth and to continue the challenge, real challenge. They're both challenging, but to grow the fund balance, which is a real challenge these days. So rating, everything turned out as expected. I know Patty and Brian participated in that call, and I do very little talking in that. It's primarily them they answer all the questions. So that turned out very well. So if you go back to page 1 of the sale packet, the results of the sale again occurred at 10 o'clock today. We received 6 bids on pages 1 and 2 of the bids. Bankers Bank, a very familiar name to the city, was the low bid. Bankers Bank bid a true interest rate of 1.8342% for 11-year financing over 11 years. 1.8 is a great rate. BOSC, a subsidiary of Bank of Oklahoma, doing business in Menominee Falls, was 1.8636%. Why are they in the Falls? They're in the Menominee Falls. I know when I say the Falls, you think Sheboygan Falls, don't you? When they're in Menominee Falls because there are a couple of guys that used to work for M&I Bank that are now working for the Bank of Oklahoma, but stayed in locally, and they buy a lot of bonds. They're at 1.8636%. On the second page, UMB Bank out of Kansas City, FTN Financial Capital Markets out of Memphis, Morgan Keegan out of Memphis, and then Robert W. Baird out of Milwaukee were the bidders that all bid, and they were pretty close. If you look at it from top to bottom, 1.83 to 1.979%. So they're pretty grouped. One of the things that we've seen a great deal more in the last 3 weeks is fluctuation, a little more fluctuation in the bond market. You see that with the mortgage market, you see that with the 10-year treasury. They're all kind of trending a little bit up. And so we were a little concerned that about 5 weeks ago when we were here, we projected rates based upon AA2 credit, Elm Grove, recent sale, and we've seen market move a little bit. Happy to report the rates turn out being almost identical to what we had provided 5 weeks ago, almost identical. So if you go to pages 3 and 4, this is a before and after as to how we get to the actual par amount of the bonds being issued. 3,820,000, the number highlighted in yellow, the first number, was the issue amount that you authorized, and it's in your draft resolution. If you flip to the next page, what you're going to authorize tonight is $3,785,000 or $35,000 less. That's a result of these firms bid interest rate and discount, and they bid the discount lower, so we're able to reduce the issue size by $35,000. If you go to pages 5 and 6, this is total debt service projected and actual. Total principal and interest projected was $4,249,000. The actual on page 6 is $4,243,000. You can say, wow, you guys are really good. You missed by $6,500 on $4 million. Nope, we just got lucky. For $6,500 difference, fortunately to the better than what we had shown you. So rates, again, were really right on top of what we showed you 5 weeks ago, even though we did see quite a fluctuation in that time period. The reason you're doing this, remember, is twofold. One is you are refinancing one of the debt issues that tied 100% back to the TIF district. And then another debt issue that you are, again, refinancing but also restructuring, the state trust fund loan. So you're doing the combination of the two. On pages 7 and 8 is the total savings identified. Again, we projected $164,000 in savings, ended up being $171,000 in savings. Again, very close at roughly $6,000 to $7,000 difference between the two. And then, again, just as a reminder as to why we refinanced and restructured the state trust fund, remember, roughly 50% was TIF, 50% was general fund, and we really did it to help with the cash flow of the TIF as to why we restructured that piece of it. The actual 2003 savings, which is on pages 9 preliminary, 10 final, we projected a savings on 203,000, ended up being a little, almost 208,000. Again, so very close and very small deviation between any of these. Finally, just to give you a feel for what was happening in the market in the last couple of weeks, if you go to page 13, this shows kind of what's happening with rates over just the last year. You don't hear much about it in the news, but in end of January, early February, we hit a 40-year low in the market, and we've kind of been creeping up a little bit from that low. You can see kind of the trend, and that's what I talked about. The last part of this graph is what we've seen over the last 2 to 3 weeks. So again, we're a little concerned as to where rates were going to come in, although we have a pretty good feel right now because we're doing multiple bond issues every week right now. So we have a pretty good feel as to where the market is on a day-to-day basis. So all in all, good results. You save significant dollars that will help the cash flow of the TIF. You're retained your AA3 rating, and I think the sale, you had a lot of interest. You had 6 bidders nationally. So it turned out very good.
Good. Thank you very much, Phil. Why don't you just hang tight for a second, and we'll entertain a motion to approve and discuss and see if we have any questions for you.
I would so make a motion to approve.
Second, Oliver Anderson.
We have a first and a second to approve the authorization issuance of sale of $3,815,000 as indicated. Any additional questions for Phil? Thank you very much.
Isn't it $3,785,000?
I'm sorry, I was reading off the front page. Correct. $3,785,000. Alderperson Jarvis.
I just want to thank Phil for coming here tonight and sharing this with us, and also, again, a thanks to Director Yergis and Clerk Huberty for saving money for the citizens of Plymouth.
Any other comments, questions? Clerk will call the roll.
Jarvis,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Lottie,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Riley,
Yes.
Sedlacek,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carried, thank you. Thank you, Phil, we appreciate it. Moving on to item 7, award contracts for fiber optic network installation project between substation numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 and the Plymouth Utilities Operations Center. I'll ask John McKinnon, our utility manager, to start with a summary and introduce Dan Beckman to us this evening.
Good evening. This evening, we have two items to address with the fiber optic network installation project. We have a materials quotation have been received by the consultant, as well as bids for the installation of the materials. This evening, I have Dan Becker, communications engineer with Multimedia Communications and Engineering with us, and I'll ask Dan to come forward to explain the materials quotations we received, as well as the bids for the construction. Dan?
Good evening, Dan. Before you start, just a comment to the council. This discussion is for items both 7A and 7B. You'll see the purpose why we're doing 7A first on the contract as we go through the discussion here. So we'll kind of tackle the purposes at once, and then we'll entertain two separate motions. Thank you. Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. McKinnon, board members. As Mr. McKinnon indicated, we did set these projects out separately, one for the material, the other for the labor. The reason being is that our main concern with the material was for the fiber optic cable lead times. The lead times are ranging anywhere, when this hit the street, from 30 weeks through 40 weeks. And our construction schedule started in April and ended December 31st. So we put the material out separately in an attempt to open the material bidding to distributors who have contacts with various manufacturers who will be able to provide better lead times than what we were seeing. With that being said, in the material bid, we did indicate that the vendors were given the opportunity to provide alternative pricing for various fiber optic cable manufacturers dependent on improved lead times, and that the response must indicate the lead time and estimated delivery date based on a specific purchase date. So when we put the material out to bid, our main focus was to get something that fit in with our construction schedule. Having said that, we received bids from 5 different vendors. Out of the 5 different vendors, 2 of them offered alternative manufacturer substitutions, one of which provided cable lead times in 12 weeks, which, if we were to project that out based on an aggressive purchase date of April 9th, that would put the fiber optic cable on site July 2nd, roughly in that area. And that would give the contractor then an additional 25 weeks between July 2nd through December 31st to finish their construction. The reason I bring this up is what you see in front of you. The 12-week lead time is also the highest bid that was received. One point to note that you may have picked up when looking at the recommendation letter is that though it was the highest bid received, it was still within the established budget that was presented back in 2010 as part of an overall project cost of $750,000. Of that $750,000 that was approved, there was an allocation of $156,832 for the fiber optic materials and apparatus. The bid that we received with a 12-week lead time provided all those materials for $156,598. Albeit close to the budget, it was still $233 below budget. So using that information, we made our recommendation, which we typically are not in a situation where we have to do this, but we made our recommendation to award the bid to the highest bidder with the fastest lead time. Now, you may be asking, what if we were to award that to the lowest bidder, which, as you see on this sheet, is $127,000, roughly $28,000 difference? What that would do is that would make our material delivery date December 2nd instead of July 2nd. Our construction schedule runs through December 31st, so the 25 weeks is now condensed into 4. The bid that we put out on the street for the labor portion indicated that the contractor had from April through December to continuously work on this project. Now, with this material arriving in December, we would then be asking the contractor to do 4 weeks, or rather 25 weeks worth of work in the time frame of 4. And, my thought would be that they would have serious cause to question the contract that they would enter into with the city based on this information and based on its difference between what they bid on initially. Which goes to the point as to why we're presenting the material recommendation prior to the labor recommendation.
Good, thank you,
Thank
Dan, that's very true. Comments?
Could you walk
Council
through
Jarvis.
we have already secured the labor contract?
No, ma'am.
No.
We've secured the responses to the labor bid, but nothing has been awarded at this point.
Okay, so what, then it still is possible to, your scenario about, what were you talking about that we'd be having a problem?
The,
Couldn't we go out and do another labor bid for after?
that's what would have to happen.
Right.
And when you do the labor bid for after, if you were to say, scrap this round of labor bidding, you would have to then put this out again through the winter months. And there's a number of issues that come into play, some that need not mention the increase in labor cost and fuel and everything that goes into their price between now and the end of the year, as well as doing the project at a different time frame, coupled with how are the projects, or rather, how are the contractors situated for work when this goes back out onto the street? That $28,000 savings may evaporate due to those conditions. That's what our concern is.
Is the materials, are they able to be stored? If we would have them arrive in December and then not start the labor until the summer months?
It's not something that we had discussed as far as storing the cable reels and the materials, but we would have to then have a conversation and find out where we could keep those, if there would be a suitable place for them.
Because at 127 to 156,000 is a substantial amount of savings.
Alderman Anderson?
If these items were stored,
Yes.
say until next year, which is what you're saying, your cost of labor is gonna go up also.
And that's where I say the $28,000 savings may evaporate
Right.
based on the next round of bidding.
And I'd rather have this done within 12 weeks than waiting 34 or 35 weeks.
Understood.
And get it done this year instead of going into next year.
Understood. The presentation or the scenario we're presenting in front of you right now allows us to accomplish that.
Right.
When we start talking about the labor bids, we can then see that there's savings below our estimate based on this current round of labor bidding to the tune of $25,000. And I guess my fear would be that both the $25,000 and the $28,000 worth of savings that we
Evaporate.
see right now would evaporate.
How do we know that the labor is going to be more expensive next, if we would put it out to bid in winter?
Typical labor rates, we've seen them going up every year, just like the cost of fuel goes up, the cost for their equipment goes up. When we do the prevailing wage determinations as well, they're only good through the calendar year. We would reevaluate the prevailing wage. Typically annually, the prevailing wage rates increase as well. I can't speculate it would be unfair for me to speculate, I'll state, what the prevailing wage rate will be for 2013. But if you were to go back through 2011, 2010, 2009, you'll see that every year they do go up.
Do you have an idea what that percentage is of how much it goes up each year?
With what I've got in front of me, I couldn't tell you what that percentage is.
Alderman Lottie?
My concern would be, you know, we put a new building up, we saved a substantial amount of money on this building from what we were first proposing. And to get this up and running, and to get everything pulled together at one time, I think it's to our advantage. Maybe it'll cost us a little more money at the present time, but we're gonna be coming on board a lot faster. If you take the other bid at the lowest bid, you got 34 weeks, but then you're sitting there and storing equipment, and like they're talking, labor rates could change, you know. I think that spending the extra 28,000 up front, and if you're talking the labor came in 20,000 below what was estimated, or 25, you're only looking at $3,000 different. If you take that difference, you're spending 28 more, but you're saving another 25 on the labor part, so there's only a $3,000 difference really. So my feeling is to do it within a 12-week time frame.
I have a question, Dan. The work that we're doing, the labor work, we're talking summertime versus fall, winter, and spring?
Yes, yes, we are.
And I would assume that we're talking outdoor
Yes.
labor work?
Yes, it is. There's a
Conditions
portion of
and
this
so on.
work that will take place inside the buildings. When you look at the overall project, that internal work probably accounts to about 10% of everything that has to be done. So 90% of this entire project is out in the elements. And of that 90%, another 90% of that requires the cable to be on site in order for it to be performed.
Okay. And overall, the combination of the recommendation, the overall is still less than the expected price that you were,
Yes, and I made myself a cheat sheet so I could readily answer some questions here.
okay,
That number of the overall savings versus the estimated, estimates for the labor and material versus the actual bid amounts is a total savings of $25,781.26. That's what was achieved through the bid process versus what was included in the $750,000 bond amount that was put forward in 2010.
okay, a question for Director Yurgis. We've already borrowed these funds?
Yeah, I believe that needs to be corrected. The bond, I believe this project was originally funded in 2008. And so the ratepayers are currently paying principal and interest on this project. This project was originally going to be sooner, or earlier than this point, but the utility building project, took a little bit longer to get going and being completed. And on the heels of that project, the plan was to be beginning the stages of putting in this fiber network project. So that was an important piece of this, is to wait till that project is pretty much completed and then be incorporating that into the new building. The other thing is, you know, eventually the new SCADA system has to be moved over from the old utility building, which we will have a temporary easement to have that in the old building until the end of this year, December 31st, and so the plan would also be to move that over, and that, obviously that impacts this project. And then I guess another comment is if the council's not in favor of moving forward with this project, I would not recommend buying the fiber and have it sit in a warehouse. This isn't something that we typically install. You know, the fiber has, it's, you know, it's a...
It does have a shelf life.
Yeah, it does have a shelf life, but, you know, we would want to install to make sure that it's working properly, and not have it sitting somewhere and then months later install it and have no guarantee that it would be working at that point. So I would caution against purchasing the fiber and then not moving forward with the project. I would not recommend that.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you.
Attorney Fever.
Just make a comment. I know the council is used to hearing me say that the contracts need to be awarded to the lowest responsible bidder. I did speak to Mr. Becker this afternoon because obviously in this case, we have the highest bidder that we're looking to award the contract to. And we did discuss what the bidding documents said as far as what lead time would be required. And based on the situation, I'm comfortable with the language that Mr. Becker explained was in the bidding documents that explained to those who were interested in the project that lead time was an important factor. So as far as complying with the statutes on that part, there is some risk in not awarding it to the lowest responsible bidder, but I feel comfortable based on our conversation as far as what was in the bidding documents.
Good, thank you. Alderperson
Yeah,
Jarvis.
thank you. I would recommend that we look into whether, if there was a storage period for those fiber optics for a 3-month period, whether that wrecks any kind of guarantee, or if that nullifies any warranties on the product, because I would be more in favor of doing the 34-week lowest bid, and then also coordinating the labor around that schedule and put out a bid and see, you know, we have potential of saving close to $50,000 if we would do something like that. I'd be more in favor of doing something like that. Thank you.
Alderman Lottie.
I can respect Alderperson Jarvis's recommendation here. My concern is when I look at cable installation and things that are done in inclement weather outside. You get a snowstorm, you got freezing temperatures, you get rain, whatever can happen. That's going to delay the project, especially if you're doing outside. 90% of your work is going to be out in the environment, you know, in the elements, and that's why I'm looking at going over, and I can understand where our attorney's coming from to a lowest bid, but I think that 12-week lead time offsets that risk for us. And I'm saying, you know, as long as we get the building done, we get it all up and running. We build a new building, and then it's only half there when we want to start up. They haven't got all the equipment, then they got to run around. How much time is lost with our utility personnel chasing to do SCADA and all that other stuff has to be moved. That's why I'm comfortable going with the 156 with the 12-week lead time.
Alderman Zlotchek.
I would like to make a motion to approve the contract to the Graybar Company in the amount of $156,598.94 for the fiber optic material.
So moved.
We have a first and a second to approve the material contract as indicated for $156,598.94. Additional discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Sedlacek.
Yes.
Lottie.
Yes.
Riley.
Yes.
Fowler.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Jarvis.
No.
Motion carried, thank you. Moving on, thank you, Dan. Moving on to item B, same project, installation, labor contract, Cablecom LLC, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in the amount of $166,835.91. Again, same topic, same discussion. Did you want to add anything on to what we already said, Dan?
No, Mr. Mayor,
Okay.
this is typical bid practice. Low bidder is qualified.
Okay. Chair will entertain a motion to approve item B in the amount of $166,835.91.
So moved, Alder Anderson.
Second, Alder Lottie.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Fowler.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Sedlacek.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Lottie.
Yes.
Jarvis.
No.
Riley.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you. Thank you, Dan. We appreciate it. Thank you for all the work on the project and the bidding process. I know they get involved, and analyzing sometimes gets to be hair-pulling.
Yes, it
And
does.
certainly, we appreciate coming in under the original projection, too.
And thank you for your time tonight.
You're welcome. Moving on, item 8, approve the investment of Plymouth utility funds in the amount of $45,788 in voluntary additional capital into American Transmission Company, ATC. I'll call on our Director Utility, John McKinnon, to comment on this particular item.
We have an opportunity to invest some dollars into ATC on this particular call. ATC has announced to us they'll be making a couple of calls this year. This is one of those calls, and our portion into this call is identified on your agenda. It's my recommendation that we do make that investment. For your information, as ATC makes these calls available to us, if and when we ever decide that we do not want to participate in the call, then that decision will prevent us from participating in any future calls with ATC. So once you say no, you can never come back and participate in any future calls. So we're in a position at this point in time that we can make this investment, and that my recommendation to you that we do that. The investment has returned to us around 11%, and which is a very good return.
Thank you, John. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the investment of $45,788 so we can discuss.
So moved, Alderman Riley.
Second, Sidlacher.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Riley,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Jarvis,
Yes.
Lottie,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Sedlacek.
Yes.
Motion carried, thank you. Item 9, discussion and approval of termination of the Cemetery Perpetual Care Fund and transfer of funds to the committed other fund for general cemetery purposes. Director Yurgis, you want to make a comment on that to summarize it?
You have a balance sheet in the packet. Basically, it's the $54,519, and then there's a note of the $37,740, which is the cemetery land purchase. So the amount that will be transferred to the committed other fund is the $16,779.90.
Thank you. Chair will entertain a motion to approve as read.
So moved, Alder Anderson.
Second, Lottie.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Alderman Hanson.
Any additional funds that come in from sale of plots will go to the
The new committed.
committed, okay.
No, that's not the, that's
No,
not
that
the-
was a question. I was
Yeah, no,
clarifying the
that-
question,
it-
not
it
the
is-
answer.
Yeah, it's a general fund revenue, 100%. Previously, $50 per sale, I believe, or $100 for the non-residents would go into the perpetual care, and then the rest would stay as a general fund revenue. The entire amount will remain a general fund revenue.
Any other comments? Alderman Lottie.
Question, then care and maintenance of the cemetery will come out of general fund total, just like it is now, I think, right?
Yeah, it's currently, that's the way it's currently been done. The funds have not been taken out of that perpetual care fund for maintenance necessarily. It's been for capital improvement projects, and originally the money was set aside to build up a fund for the future purchase of land as well as other capital improvements,
Okay, thank you.
such as roadways.
Alderman Sedlacek.
So the cemetery perpetual care fund will have $16,779.90. Won't be increased.
The cemetery perpetual care fund is being terminated. What is happening is the money is being slid over to the committed other
Okay.
accounts, or designated accounts. The new term that we're using now as of December 2011 is committed other, but previously it was the designated accounts. And so that $17,000 will show up in that section for the cemetery and may be used for cemetery purposes upon approval of the common council. But the balance will not increase because we're We have eliminated perpetual care. Keep in mind, in 2008 or 9, we took $90,000 from that fund. If we kept perpetual care, technically, we should be paying that back with interest.
I guess my question is, in the future, if there is a need for purchase, land purchase, that would then have to come from the general fund?
Correct. But keep in mind, originally, the perpetual care fund, by definition, that was originally in place, wasn't necessarily really meant to be used for the necessarily purchase of land. That's just the way it was set aside. It probably should have been terminated 20 years ago, but it hasn't been done. And pretty much all the labor costs is already coming from the general fund. We also have a 10-year capital improvement plan that we are updating on an annual basis, and we're approving the capital expenditures on an annual basis with the budget document
Right.
as well. So any of those items would come through that process.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Lottie?
I noticed, I drove through there the other day, and I looked at the thing. I noticed there's partial gravel road in there, so in our Director's of City Services Capital Improvement Plan, sometime in the near future, I suppose, he's gonna have a budget item in there to blacktop that section of road through the cemetery.
Correct. The cemetery purchase, the land purchase, was actually part of the capital improvement plan. It wasn't slotted in the year 2012, but I believe it was out there because we knew it was coming soon for discussion purposes. And I think originally when we went through that process, it was in there for like the year 2014. The purchase of the land will be removed from that plan and will no longer be in there because obviously we purchased the 4.5 acres. The cost of the road is roughly $23,000, and that needs to be added into the capital plan for a future year.
So, if I may, so part of this 16,000 that's being pushed over there, or 17,000, part of that could be used to create the cremation area and fill in this low spot that Bill said, part of that money could be used for that, to level that area out in there?
Yeah, it could be.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? We had a motion already, right? Yes, okay. Didn't have that checked off on my list. Thank you. Clerk will call the roll.
Hanson.
Yes.
Yes.
Jarvis. Sedlacek.
Yes.
Lottie.
Yes?
Riley.
Yes.
Fowler.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carried, thank you. Moving on, item 10, discussion and approval of termination of indemnification agreement with Triana LLC, Amore, regarding parking at Plymouth Utilities, 12 South Mill Street, as of August 1st, 2012. Chair will entertain a motion so we can discuss.
So moved, Alder Anderson.
Second, Alder Lottie.
We have a first and a second. Any discussions? Director Eagers, you want to add a comment to
Yeah,
that?
in your packet, you have the original indemnification agreement signed in 2009. The owners have been notified that the city is selling the property and that the indemnification agreement will be terminated. The city attorney will be drafting a release document, which city staff will be signing after council approval, and then we will be sending that to the owners for duplicate signature. And then that will take care of the issue, and they've been notified who the new owner is so that they can make contact with Mr. Jerry Thompson if they so wish.
Thank you. We have a first and a second. Other discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Anderson.
Yes.
Riley.
Yes.
Lottie.
Yes?
Jarvis. Fowler.
Yes.
Sedlacek.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried. Item 11, Finance and Personnel Committee. Item A, discussion and approval of budget, financial, and investment policies recommended by the Finance Committee on March 13th. I would call on Council President Hanson to maybe make a first comment and then
I'm just gonna defer.
pass it to, okay, defer to Director Yurgis. Thank you.
You have had a very short memo or summary and then the actual policies behind that document. This is something that I've been working on with the Finance and Personnel Committee since it was reorganized last year. We've been working on it since June of 2011. We were to a point where they were ready to make a recommendation, and the recommendation was made. And it would be a nice time to wrap up approval of this as a result of the new council change and so forth. There are a number of policies. It starts with the general operations policy and investment policy. Fund balance policy, just wanted to highlight that the unassigned general fund balance policy is 20 to 25%, and then amounts over that will be allocated to either remain in the general fund balance or be transferred to the capital projects fund for future projects, or as assigned by the approval of the common council for specific projects. It also talks about 30 to 50% policy for the utilities. Policy number 4, debt management policy. Policy number 5, it actually is a policy we previously approved prior to the bond sale. That's the post-issuance compliance policy for tax-exempt obligations. Capitalized fixed assets policy, that's something we're already doing, but we're putting it in writing. Purchasing and expenditure policy, accounts receivable collection policy, segregation of duties and financial control policy, annual budget policy, which is already incorporated into the annual budget document, and then an interfund transfer loan policy. That one might be a little confusing. That's really related to times where we have advanced monies from funds to other funds, such as advancement of funds from the utilities to TID number 6. That would be an example of that. Technically, we should be approving that by a resolution, and that should be documented on paper of those advancements and tracked over a series of years. Questions, comments?
Chair will entertain a motion to approve, so we can discuss.
Second, Alder Riley.
We have a first and a second to approve the finance and the budget financial investment policies as indicated. Discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item 12, approve 2011-12 tavern operator licenses listed, previously approved by Chief Tauschek. Chair will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved, Alder Anderson.
Second, Alderman Riley.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item 13, utility reports. 13A, a list of vouchers, February 2012. Authorized payment of February vouchers. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the list and payment of February 12 vouchers.
So move, Alder Lottie.
Second, Alder Fowler.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Riley?
Yes.
Fowler?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Jarvis?
Yes.
Sedlacek?
Yes.
Lottie?
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you. Item B, collection statement for February 2012. Item C, uncollectible accounts for March 2012 in the amount of $5,157.05. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the uncollectible accounts for March 2012 for the amount of $5,157.05.
So moved, Alder Anderson.
Second, Alder Lottie.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Lottie?
Yes.
Sedlacek?
Yes.
Jarvis?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Fowler?
Yes.
Riley?
Yes.
Motion carried, thank you. Other business, item A, building permit report for March 2012. We have 40 permits issued with an estimated total of $4,379,810. Item B, minutes acknowledged for filing are on file with the clerk's office and available to the public. Item 15, make a note before I announce, ask for a motion to adjourn. Special note, April 17th. Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn until April 17th, 2012.
So move, Alder Hanson. Second, Alder Lottie.
We have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Mayor,
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. We stand adjourned.